looking like a baddie. I show up and make them stop.
Hello everyone， 欢迎大家来到 Anna and Yaya's Talk。然后今天我们非常高兴，因为在之前其实很多期视频里面，我们已经聊到了很多关于 Solana 101，大家怎么去用这个 self custody， 怎么去开始使用 Solana 的钱包。那今天这一期也是非常特别，我们想给大家带来一个关于 multisig 这样的一个 topic。那我们也很高兴，就是邀请到了在这个 multisig 领域，特别是在 Solana 生态里面非常有影响力，做出了一些非常有创新性产品的一个团队。叫做 Squads， 然后我们很高兴邀请到了他们的 CEO Stepan 来跟我们一起。然后我现在把 Mark 交给安娜，然后让安娜再来给大家 share 一些为什么我会做这个话题的一个 insight。Hello，
大家好，我是安娜。今天呢，我们在做了101视频之后，做了很多的热钱包，所以也想跟大家聊一下，如果是作为 builder 或者是创始人有自己的项目，而且有比较多资金的情况下，怎么去建立一个很好的自我托管多签钱包的一个设置。那在这个过程中呢，我很早之前，其实2年前就认识了 Squads， 他们在 Solana 上面也建了很久，所以非常有幸能够找到 Squads 团队的创始人今天来加入我们。
Happy to have Stepan with us, and he just shared a little bit about his background with me, and I was super amazed. And now I would like to hand over the mic to Stepan to share about your background and also your story with Solana and how did you get started with Squads.
Thanks so much for having me. So I used to be a lawyer. I did corporate M&A for about 5 years before getting into crypto. I was always interested in sort of Bitcoin and then kind of Ethereum, and naturally gravitated towards Solana. Around 2021, we started building Squads with 2 of my co-founders, focusing originally on DAO infrastructure, and then we found this one piece that was most exciting to us, which was multisig and smart accounts, and been developing it for Solana since 2021. Today, we're at the smart account standard for SVM, securing over 10 billion in value and servicing majority of the teams on Solana when it comes to managing their treasuries, programs, tokens, validators. And we also have a retail version of a smart account, which is Fuse, which is a retail smart wallet for secure self-custody of user assets with 2FA, spending limits, recovery, and other programmable capabilities. So maybe a quick overview on sort of smart accounts and Squads and kind of the stack. So Squads protocol allows to create a programmable account on Solana where users can program different rules and parameters for what happens to that account and the assets in it. The most famous example for a while was a multisig wallet. And the main difference from a traditional wallet is that multisig wallet exists on chain, and it's basically a program, a smart contract that holds the assets instead of it being a single key pair. And a multisig allows to have multiple keys that control the account. And so if you're an enterprise or a group of people that want to secure assets together, for example, you're a startup and you just raised a bunch of VC funding, and you can put it in a multisig, add multiple people, set a threshold, for example, 3 out of 5. And then whenever you need to do a transaction, 3 out of 5 people on the account need to approve it for the funds to actually go out of the account. So multisig is particularly useful for enterprises and groups. And then the smart account use case for individuals is basically, instead of trusting a single key pair with your assets, you can put the assets in a smart account and have multiple keys control it. And so you can have things like 2FA or have multiple keys for redundancy and recovery, and give these keys to your sort of family members who can help you recover the account in case you lost access to one of the keys. So that's basically the major unlock of a smart account, which makes a traditional account programmable and allows you to kind of ingrain this interesting logic that unlocks all these product possibilities.
And to add to that, it is not incompatible with Ledger. So you can actually have both hot wallet, soft wallet, cold wallet, tip link, and any other kinds of wallets. So some people also use ledgers as one of the, what's the correct way to describe this?
As one of the signers on the account, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk a bit about MPC, multi-party computation, wallets, and infrastructure versus multisig, because I think some of the builders, for Asian builders, some of the custodians and like Binance, Seifu, or some of the MPC vaults are a bit more, they may be more familiar with it. So I wanted to get some clarification and to help you builders decide which ones to choose.
Sure. So MPC is a very different architecture, which basically allows to split the private key. So you still have a single key pair, a single private key and a single public key. And then MPC is a schema that allows you to separate that private key into multiple shards. So that split happens off-chain, and then the shards are also stored off-chain. And then all the logic, for example, the threshold or any other parameters you want to ingrain, they also have to exist off-chain. And so the difference from a smart contract wallet or smart account is that in a smart account, all of this exists on chain. And so you can have an open source program on an open and permissionless blockchain where all the logic that governs your assets, you can actually see it and verify it, right? And so that's probably one of the bigger differences between the two. And then in case of MPC, when it's being created and the shards are being distributed, there's still an element of trust in the provider that there's no man in the middle attack in the sense where there's kind of no issues that happened along the way that allowed somebody to copy parts of the private key or these shards. And then one of the other kind of core differences is that once you have the shard of the private key with MPC, there's no revocation, right? Because you always keep that part of the shard, which is very different from a smart account and a smart contract wallet, because you can just decide on chain that this key shouldn't be a part of the multisig anymore, and you remove it, which is very different because with MPC, you just can't take away the encrypted shard that somebody holds. And so key revocation is also one of the core sort of architectural and structural differences that I think kind of for many builders that choose between the two should be a huge factor. I think MPC definitely has its moments. I think it's because it's off-chain, it's much more scalable. So if you need to deploy, a million wallets and kind of set parameters for those, it's definitely much easier to do off-chain, but easier doesn't mean more secure. And I think with kind of fast and scalable blockchains like Solana, the idea that we can bring sort of the same level of scalability to an on-chain infrastructure is becoming much more reality.
Yeah, one of the other points, so last night I was having dinner with a cryptographer, and he was telling me that in his previous company, I think they spent 20 million a year in gas fees processing multisig on Ethereum. It was insane. A number that when I heard, because I was asking him the same question, it's like, hey, what do you think about MPC versus multisig? And he's like, yeah, multisigs get really, really expensive on Ethereum, but it doesn't sound like it's an issue on Solana, at least for majority of the users.
That is absolutely correct. And I think like the benefit of having, building on a blockchain that's also being actively developed and continuously evolving is that, these things get optimized over time. And like every new Squads version is an optimization on the previous one where, we optimize the costs and basically the amount of on-chain data that needs to be stored. And so I think over time, these things will get even cheaper, and we're sort of optimistic about it being, very scalable. And even today, majority, I think that's what one of the bigger unlocks for us that we experienced was the fact that once you create this kind of product on Solana, a lot more teams and enterprises now choose to do their operations on chain because it becomes efficient for them and scalable, and it's more secure. And so all these things kind of come together on Solana for us, and that's definitely one of the benefits of being here.
Yeah, that sounds quite exciting. Like, just calling out to the entrepreneurs and the founders. Definitely, like Solana and also Squads team has already built a very solid fundamental for you to build on chain and make it more secure, scalable, and also more cost efficient. So if you still worry about scalability or the cost of multisig, then I think it's a time to try Squads. And now I would love to give the time to Stepan to show us like how the entrepreneurs or founders can start to experience the product of Squads.
So if you navigate to app.squads.so, you will see this page where you connect a wallet. We will choose Phantom for this example. So this is a test squad I created previously. If you want to create a new squad, at the bottom of this page, you can see Create Squad button and create a new one. You insert the name, a description. Let's do test. Add the initial members by inserting their public key here, and then set the initial threshold. And then you hit deploy and we're good to go. This is the dashboard and sort of the first screen you will see. The core components of the multisig would be members, where you add and remove members from the multisig, so you can add multiple people of your enterprise. The settings, where you can see the relevant threshold, how many members you have, adjust spending limits and a time lock, and we can talk more about it. That's relevant. The treasury is probably one of the more popular aspects of the Squads app. This is where you transfer in the treasury for your enterprise, and from here you can send it to various Solana addresses. You can off-ramp via our CoinFlow integration. You can also deposit assets here, and you can also do limit orders if you want to diversify the treasury, and swaps, all powered by Jupyter.
You can also interact with any DeFi via the wallet.
So we have the extension, Squads, which is a browser extension that you can install. And then you add it as a signer on the account with limited rights. So it can only initiate transactions. And then you can go to different DeFi applications and interact with also Jupyter. You can interact with Meteora, MarginFi, and a bunch of other ones.
That was a pretty big point for a lot of the custodians when we talked to. A lot of them don't support DeFi. So that means you can only have funds in there, and whatever you put in is whatever you have to stay there. So this is a pretty big unlock.
I think it's also understandable because there's a lot of kind of ongoing manual work for us to make sure that compatibility doesn't break, and that all these apps, because these apps are being actively developed, and developers ship something every week, right? And so it takes a lot of work to make sure that it works, but it works with a lot of applications on Solana today. And we also have a staking aggregator. So if you hold SOL, you can stake it directly with different liquid staking providers, or choose any validator on Solana that you want to stake with by just searching here, and we have a couple kind of pre-selected for you at the top. And then there's the developer section. So if your enterprise is building things on Solana, at some point you deploy a program on mainnet, the upgrade authority to the program is probably one of the most valuable assets that the team will have. And if you have an upgrade authority in a single key pair, whoever has the authority can basically, if it's a DeFi protocol, upgrade the program and kind of take everything that's in it out. And so one of the kind of original popular features of Squads was program management. And so you can add the upgrade authority to your multisig. And so every upgrade to your program needs to pass the threshold, right? So multiple developers on the team need to review the upgrade, and we have a GitHub action linking and a bunch of other things that make it a very sort of intuitive experience. Then there's also the validator management section.
Sorry, one more point on that for people who are new coming into Solana is that a lot of Solana programs are upgradable, whereas in EVM world, it is customary to keep immutable contracts. So Squads is actually one of the few immutable smart contracts on Solana. But if you look at any DeFi protocol, I think almost all of them are upgradable, which makes this super important.
That's correct. Important Squads protocol v3 is immutable. v4 is going to be immutable. We do have a commitment to make our programs immutable within around a year or earlier from the day they're being launched. And that's what kind of forces us to ship new versions every time, because we make previous ones immutable, but that also is a big security guarantee. Then there's more developer-focused features like the validator manager. So if you run your own validator, you can manage the withdraw authority here. You can add multiple validators and have the dashboard. There's the token manager. So if at some point you decide to launch a token, you can actually either create a new token or transfer the token authority to your squad. And then there's the transaction builder, which is very popular with developers, which basically allows you to create custom Solana transactions. Mostly developers use it to interact with their own programs. If you want to manage different admin functions of your protocol, this is where you go. And then there's the transaction list, which basically whenever you initiate a transaction, it would appear here, and then other members will have to approve it. We also have a risk scanner by Blowfish, so it kind of tells you what's happening in a transaction. And talking about efficiency, every multisig transaction has a rent associated with it that basically needs to be paid by the initiator of the transaction to store data on chain. But you can turn on rent reclamation in settings, and then once the transaction is executed, you can reclaim the rent back, making transactions as cheap as they would be in Phantom.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's my first time to check the multisig, but maybe in the future when I start my entrepreneur or my own company, frankly, Squads will be my first choice. Thank you so much for a very detailed product introduction.
I also must say that we have a lot of users of Squads that use it individually, right? Because when you're holding a bunch of assets on chain, your options are, hold it on a centralized exchange, hold it in a sort of hot wallet or cold wallet. And all these things are single points of failure. If the exchange has any issues, your assets are kind of going to be in breach. And then if the hot wallet private key is compromised, if the cold wallet seed phrase is getting out somewhere, then your assets are gone. And so a lot of users actually create a Squads account, put a bunch of keys in, multiple ledgers and maybe a hot wallet, and then basically use it to store majority of their assets. And maybe that's a good segue to talk about Fuse.
Fuse would be really good. For context, I think a lot of people in our community start from centralized exchanges, and then through Jito, Jupyter, and some of the other airdrops and campaigns and all that became more interested in Solana. So probably a lot of them are used to the centralized exchange trading experience and are using hot wallets, would be my guess, even though we did a video on convincing people to use ledgers, but ledger is really hard to use if you're clicking around a lot on chain. So I was super excited to see Fuse launch, and it's very seamless to use. The only complaint I have so far is I couldn't create many accounts. So there's one wallet and I'm like, I want to have like 10 wallets. So yeah, would love to have you guys give us an overview of when you guys started thinking about this and what was the process like for building that out?
We originally started thinking about Fuse about a year ago when we saw that a lot of customers come to Squads and use it individually. And to us, it felt like the user experience can be much better because in the current setup, they had to add multiple keys to the Squads account, connect different wallets to approve transactions. And we're trying to find a way to make it a better UX for them. And started thinking about mobile first and how can we bring smart account experience to mobile. And at that point, the idea for Fuse was born. The way Fuse is structured that whenever you create a Fuse wallet, a smart account is deployed with 3 keys and the threshold of 2 out of 3. By default, the first key is stored on device, the second stored in iCloud, and the third is a recovery key which you choose, which can be a wallet or an email. And then if you want to upgrade your security, you can change the second key, which is your 2FA key, to become a cold wallet. Right now, we only support Ledger, but we're adding Keystone next. And then we're going to be supporting majority of cold wallet providers as options for 2FA key. And then we allow to add up to 3 recovery keys right now. So you can have another wallet as recovery, your family member's email, your own email, sort of really up to you. And then Fuse is, the way to think about it probably would be that, if Phantom is your sort of checking account, Fuse is your savings account. And so we're also kind of building it with an idea that we kind of encourage people to practice good wallet hygiene. And so majority of your assets should stay in your savings account. And you shouldn't, if you're trying to, trade on chain or claim an airdrop or buy an NFT, you shouldn't really connect all of your savings to that app. You can use Fuse to store the majority of your assets and then use hot wallets to interact with the ecosystem. And kind of the first wave of features and integrations for Fuse was really the staking. So you can stake natively or you can stake with Fuse Sol. We launched the Paymaster, which basically creates gas abstraction and allows you to never hold naked Sol. And so you can hold Fuse Sol, which is our LST, and pay gas in Fuse Sol. And so you can always earn yield on your Sol and never worry about gas. With our collaboration, and we plan to do more things together. Yeah, big fan of their team.
Yeah, we did an episode with FP as well. So he was telling us about the use cases. I'm very glad to hear that y'all are collaborating.
If Sanctum wasn't around, we probably wouldn't have gone to the length of building our own LST infrastructure and actually doing it. So the fact that they're there and offer it as a service definitely was super helpful. And then, we also introduced spending limits. Basically, if you have Ledger as 2FA and you don't want to carry your Ledger around, you can set a spending limit for daily transfers or monthly or weekly transfers that allow you to move assets just using the device key. And so basically that allows you to kind of be flexible on the go and be able to send these assets without using the 2FA key.
Digging into maybe poking some holes in the security here, one of the questions I had was actually because you released an app, so the app release authority is with Squads Labs. If in the scenario where somebody else gets to release or trick Apple App Store to upgrade this app, is there a scenario where people would end up with a different set of, with a different version of the app that they wouldn't know? We have everything on chain secure via Squads.
Right.
We all know this is good. But are there other scenarios that, thinking if we convince users to put a lot of their assets on Fuse and the dependencies, there's iCloud, assuming iCloud doesn't break, there's Apple Store, there's other connections via the app. Do you see potential areas where there could be spoofed?
So I think in terms of the interesting example you bring up in terms of somebody trying to spoof in the App Store, if somebody creates an app that looks the same and they try to convince you to download this app, because our developer account belongs to Squads Labs, we have serious OPSEC, and so it would be the level of compromise that needs to happen for somebody to publish a wrong version of the app that does something malicious. That bar is really high. If they're trying to just build a similar application, which sometimes happens, and try to make it look like this, it will still be installed on your phone as another application, right? It will not replace the current app.
Yeah.
In terms of iCloud, I think we definitely encourage you to use 2FA if you and use a ledger for 2FA. I think iCloud is there for easy onboarding because we don't want to ask you to pull out your ledger when you create the wallet. But the moment you create it, one of the first things you see on the screen is a prompt for you in quick actions to upgrade to 2FA. And I think the other probably important piece that many people don't know is that you can also secure your iCloud account with YubiKeys, which is basically a ledger for Web2. And so if you're still using iCloud and you don't have access to a ledger, YubiKeys are used, for the last 10 years by pretty much any enterprise. Once you kind of get onboarded, if there's any kind of sensitive data, a lot of it is protected by YubiKeys. And so you can protect your iCloud with YubiKeys today. That's not facilitated by us, facilitated by Apple. And YubiKeys basically, again, even if somebody tries to hack your password to your iCloud, they will not be able to do anything because that will require also your YubiKey to be compromised as well. So I think from iCloud, definitely upgrade to a ledger and buy one today. But if you don't have it, you can buy YubiKeys because I think there's much higher supply of those. And so also you can protect your iCloud that way. I think in terms of other kind of security concerns, another, if you're optimizing for sort of maximum security, if you have Ledger as 2FA and any other wallet as your recovery key, it gives you also additional redundancy because you can go to app.squads.so and you will see your account there and you can have an alternative interface, right, for your Fuse wallet. Basically, you can see it in the Squads application as well. And so a lot of users who optimize for, if they don't want to rely on a single application, just have Ledger as 2FA and another key for recovery, and you will be able to access your assets from a completely separate front end if you'd like.
That's a hack that I didn't know. So thanks for sharing that. Do you have any other things that you'd like to share with the Chinese community?
I think maybe one comment I have is that, Fuse is iOS only, but we are accelerating on all fronts to figure out the timeline for Android. And so I imagine that's very relevant. And so can give a firm commitment that we're on it and will happen at some point soon.
Nice. Also good for the Saga phone holders.
And we also you get the Fuse introduction, like your screenshots demo plate to other Chinese community members, like individual users or entrepreneur users. It's time to level up your security and try multisig and also try Squads and Fuse wallet.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much for your time. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
You too.
在此提醒大家，所有内容均不构成投资建议，都是我跟瑶瑶作为行业知识研究的产出，还有嘉宾的言论也是他们的个人言论，希望大家做自己的研究。
道路千万条，安全第一条，做自己的研究，让我们增强知识，然后在链上开心玩耍。欢迎关注安娜和瑶瑶 Talk， 然后我们会有更多行业一线前沿的资讯跟大家进行分享。非常感谢。